This is Johnny. We all know this drawing out intro as the trigger for King of Late Johnny Carson on TV at night to Macus looks. But what about the guy? How does the intro say? You might have missed him, but this individual sat next to Carson himself throughout every interview, and Evan got a lot of money for that. We're having a chat about Ed McMahon, of all people. Ed McMahon, who is noted for his famous chuckle, kept a big secret that he worked hard to hide until he got to his limit. Johnny was Ed McMahon, Carson's friend, but he died poor and without a home. How did he die in the end? In such a bad state? Learn everything about his story and more in this video. Before he was Johnny Carson's, McMahon was living on a very different life, coming from starting out small. Edward was his name when he was born. Leo Peter McMahon, JRB, was born on March 6, 1923, in the city of Detroit, Michigan. His mom and dad were Eleanor and Edward Leo Peter McMahon Sr. His father was likewise worked as a fundraiser and an entertainment, even though he was born in Detroit. When he was young, McMahon lived in Lowell, Massachusetts, where his father's Aunt Mary Brennan resided there. Even when they were young, he was a young man who could take care of himself at a young age, even working as a carnival barker for 3 years in Maine before becoming a bingo caller in the state when he was 15. Before that, McMahon found out at the youthful age of 10, he knew he wanted to be a host on the radio. From this point on, he began making his own radio broadcasts using a flashlight in an ad while practicing ads. His hard work also got through by working hard. College, where he worked as a pitchman for solicitors for vegetables on the Atlantic City boardwalk. He received his first taste of broadcasting, although his career stopped here because of the start of World War II. Like any excellent man from McMahon also wanted to serve his country, his home country. He had intended to become a USA fighter pilot of the Marine Corps, but before the US joined World War II, at least 2 years of college education were necessary for both the Army and the Navy. Because he was resolved to, McMahon went to Boston College to become a pilot from 1940 to 1941, and then sought for Marine Corps flight training not long after. His Dallas was where the flight training took place. Then there was another one in Pensacola. He regained his career landing, was qualified, and given the job of aviator in the Navy. McMahon spent the following 2 years in the Marinestiker of flying. Then he finally got his chance to join the Pacific Fleet in 1945. But the atomic bomb assaults in Hiroshima and Nagasaki happened, so those orders were cancelled. Since he was still an officer in McMahon was called up to the Marine Corps Reserve to fight in the Korean War. This time, McMahon made the most of being an aviator, flying a total of 85 combat missions, which got him 6 air medals. He stayed in the Marines, hold on till he retires in 1966 as a colonel. After the war, McMahon continued his studies, this time with the help of because of the GI Bill. He signed up for the Catholic University of America in Washington, D.C., majoring in speech and graduated in 1949. Was under the tutelage of a Universitov and American playwright and director Gilbert Hartke. After graduating, McMahon kept himself busy by raising money for a theater to be named after Hartke. He also got a job that paid him $75 a week at WCA. It was a new TV station in Philadelphia where he co-hosted a live show called The Take 10 Show, which he immediately made his own show. It took just 2 years for Man's career to grow in people in Philadelphia, and soon enough began to refer to him as Mr. Television. McMahon went to Catholic University, path to prosperity, and he had no idea that working together with a certain Simeon would make him a well-known person on the TV. Ed McMahon was lucky enough to meet Johnny Carson in 1958. Johnny Carson, who was just starting out as a comic at the time. The latter hired McMahon to be his announcer for a 30-minute comedy show in the afternoon. Has a quiz program. His task was to introduce the contestants and ads, and sometimes talk to the beginning of the show. Carson, this is none other than ABC's daytime show Who Do You Trust? Is a game show. The show it lasted for 5 years, from 1957 to 1962. When McMahon had already met them for the first time, realized that this would be the start of anything excellent. Even talking about their first meeting was about as exciting as seeing a traffic light change. Thankfully, the project that would last forever linked McMahon to Johnny Carson started and changed the course of the rest of his life. Not long after Who Dodo You Trust, Carson went to NBC, where he took McMahon went with him, and this time for Thief for a long time. They worked on the Johnny Carson show commencing on October 1st, 1962, when they would keep working together for the following 30 years. I had to help him, I said, have to help him get to the end of the joke. But I had to do it when I was doing it look like I wasn't doing anything. Ed McMahon stated of his role in the Tonight Show. The better I did it, it looked less like I was doing it. He was the voice behind the famous Drawn Here's Johnny's intro. It was so famous that Jack used it. Jack Torrance, played by Nicholson. In the highly praised horror movie The Shining from the 1980s, McMahon's persistent behavior later also became a regular part of the show, which gave him the nicknames of Human Toy Maker to the King and a laugh track with Carson as the King of the Late Night, Batman as Robin, and Johnny Carson as McMahon was his sidekick. On top of co-hosting alongside Carson, the job during the first quarter of The Tonight Show also fell on McMahon. However, it didn't air all throughout the country. He also worked as a guest on the show, hosted more than once when Carson himself wasn't free between July 29 to August 2, 1963. Two was for 2 nights in October the next year. They go well together because Johnny Carson was notorious for being restaurant and living on rapid, clever banter, whereas Ed McMahon was famous for being friendly. Even though they worked toga thermsahan shared in Carson for decades, he would still talk about it in an interview later, get butterflies in his stomach every time he went on stage. On to pay along with being an MC, Ed McMahon also has his doing commercials in the program for different sponsors of the Tonight Po dog food, Budweiser beer, and show as his most well-known ones. These jobs she also ran on other shows, and McMahon was in the news a lot from 1970 until 1980 in a number of American Family Publishers ads. Ed McMahon also eventually got his own show, which he hosted every week, syndicated show Star Search. The project got going in 1983, and it assisted start the careers of a lot of artists, singers, comedians, and event choreographers. He was in charge of it until the show ended in 1995. In 2003, CBS brought the show back on the air. Arsenio Hall hosted, and McMahon created a brief appearance. His work on commercials also paid off big time because he had known people were because of Anheuser-Busch began to nickname him Mr. Budweiser. His tight ties to this well-known brewery corporation let him bring them all together, one of the biggest donors to the Muscular Dystrophy Association, MDA, the Medessa nonprofit group whose goal is to help people who are living with muscular dystrophy, neuromuscular disorders, and ALS. He had a few hosting projects from the 1970s to the early 1990s. It included co-hosting the Jeralwis MSA Telethon, which has been going on for a long time. Live event every year during Labor Day weekend. He also presented a number of TV shows, enjoy bloopers and practical jokes on Tivdik. Clark hosted on NBC from 1982 to 1993. Ed McMahon was also in a number of movies, roles he had done. He did his first movie role in the 1967 American Neo The Incident, a noir thriller. Then indeed is in the new version of the movie Dementia, added voiceover to the movie. The original movie had music though, without talking. He played the in 1977, playing the part of Charlie Blanchard in the American comedy Fun with Dick and Jane. McMahon was also scheduled to do a role in Adam Sandler's movie from 1996, the funny movie Happy Gilmore. They hired McMahon to conduct a well-known combat sequence with Sandler says that the comic famous TV host backed out after learning about the movie's offensive humor. Funny. In the end, the part went to Bob Barker is a well-known American media figure. His final movie was on a rom-com movie called Jelly that was made by itself. He worked with Natasha Lyonne, playing the part of Mr. Closure. In addition to being a host. In addition to a few brief parts, Ed McMahon also realized his lifelong desire of become a host on the radio. He was the talker or host of the Saturday Nighters afternoon segment from 1965 to 1969. In the early 2000s, McMahon was still on TV. In 2004, he became the voice of Alf's hit of Land Chat show. His job also included a lot of game shows like Whoa Did It, Missing Links, Focus, and Quick Decision Making. McMahon has 3 wives during his life. Alice was his first wife, Frel on July 5, 1945. Back then, McMahon was still a flight teacher in the Marines when they tied the knot. The couple has 4 kids, united. Claudia and Michael, Linda, Edward, and Jeffrey. Sadly, Their marriage didn't last, therefore they broke up in 1972. And the divorce was final in 1974. McMahon didn't have to wait long to find love in his life. Therefore, he got married to his Victoria Valentine, his second wife, on the 6th of March, 1976. They took in a daughter in 1985. They named her Catherine Mary. And like this marriage, like his first one, didn't work out. The pair had broken up by 1989. McMahon gave his ex-wife and child $50,000 in support for his ex-wife every month. His third and last marriage married to Pamela Pam Hearn, who was a single mother, who has a son named Alex. They tied the knot on February 22, 1992. Only 3 days after, on February 22, 1992, they tied the knot, months before his run on The Tonight Show was over. Working right next to Johnny Carson and getting a feud should have set up commercial jobs, McMahon forever. So, what happened to him? Dying without money or a home? Even though Hayward was a household name on late-night TV, McMahon had a terrible time behind the scenes monetarily, especially in his later years. So, what were these things? Money problems? Didn't he used to make about $5 million a year? For one thing, Citibank took him to court in 2008 to get back about $200,000 that was lent to the entertainer. In addition to this, McMahon was also said to be $640,000 in debt for mortgage payments. He eventually spoke just how hard it was for him to make ends meet during a guest spot on Larry King Live in 2008. He went into depth about how Great Recession and his neck injury were the primary reasons he had trouble with obtaining a steady work, which left him not paying on time. Well, if you spend, you realize that you spend more money than you make. Things happen, McMahon told Larry King back in the year 2008. Yes, it can happen. You know, a few divorces here and there, a few things like that. And you know, everything happen. You want to be flawless, but you need that mix of the economy. I have a problem and a small injury, and it all came together. His wife, Pamela McMahon, also said what they don't have millions of dollars, which is a lot of people think this about them. So, how did he hurt himself in the first place? Ed McMahon fell at residence of millionaire investor Robert Day in March 2007. He took the investor to court, saying that the latter's house was unsafe, didn't have handrails. They also sued the hospital for not finding the fracture at first. Because of this, McMahon said that the hospital and the doctors and every doctor who was involved had messed up his procedure, which caused him a lot of pain, which made it hard for him to work. He was even in debt to make ends meet. The steps he took to sell his $6.25 million Beverly Hills mansion, $1 million house in Beverly Hills, thinking he will be able to get rid of it. But sadly, the Great Recession caused the housing market to plummet. As if that wasn't horrible enough. Ed McMahon lost money again. He didn't pay $275,168 divorce lawyer Norman Solive on July 30th of August 2008. Michael Shanker, Solive's lawyer, McMahon, and his Pamela, his wife, recruited Solive to be his lawyer, his daughter from his first marriage, Linda Schmerge, in a marriage case. That year, the future president of the United States, Donald Trump, said he would buy McMahon and at least to the Tonight Show co-host of the show. This was so the latter would have to leave home, and it was also Trump's approach of assisting the famous TV star, stating it would be an honor to do so. Instead of taking up, McMahon chose to sell his offer instead of taking it to a private buyer. Sadly, the deal didn't go through, which still left him with a lot of debt. He wouldn't say who the customer was, but hecklerly stated that it wasn't Trump. Speaking of Trump, he said he would buy McMahon's house for a second time. But McMahon's daughter Claudia is the president of the US. Neither did either of them his public offers to buy the house. People still can't help but wonder how McMahon got himself into such a deep money owed. The main reason for all of this is because of the entertainer himself, at least one of his biographers. Huffist says the cause of the TV star's money issues comes from his nice nature. It was suggested that McMahon would spend his money carelessly lending and assisting others people when he could. On top of, there were even rumors that he even helped his wife run her clothing business. And we all know that costs a lot. One of the folks that helped McMahon craft his David Pfizer wrote an autobiography that went into detail on the TV character is kind and giving character. He says that McMahon is a very kind person, toto his own harm. Fisher even went so far as saying that McMahon's income wasn't given as tips. Sadly, his kindness came back to get him in his later years, since he had a hard time making a good living. Hard problem making a good living. Like his neck injury isn't bad enough yet, also aches a lot, which makes things a lot worse than they are. Sadly, Foreman also didn't have a part of money from the Tonight Show dids. So, his option essentially boils down to getting a good job. In addition to McMahon's management was very kind, thought that another thing that was quitted to his money troubles was his bad preparation for Money.Hollywood.com says that McMahon had a significant alcohol problem in his years ago. His boss also commented anything the TV star may have done a number of business decisions made while inebriated that caused him to go into debt. You drink and you don't pay attention to your work business, his boss said about Mahan. He wasn't paying attention and probably got some awful counsel. With that said, Ed McMahon spent a lot of money and things that hurt the business were bad decisions, the primary things that caused the fall off his money, especially at the end of his life. To make things worse, the McMahon family was likewise greatly affected by this Great Recession. He had a plan, which was to sell his house in Beverly Hills, but sadly time was not on our side, him. Despite his troubles, Ed McMahon had a positive attitude and sought to stay hopeful right up until the finish. In 2002, Ed McMahon sued his insurance company business for over $20 million, saying that a poisonous mold made him sick the contractors didn't tidy up. Along they had water with the mold too, a pipe that cracked and caused damage. This mold problem not only affected McMahon and his wife sick, as well as the members of his staff at home. The fight in court finished a year later on March 21 Street, 2003, with the co-host of The Tonight Show given $7.2 million from a few off businesses. But even with this much, McMahon still owed money when he died. Ed McMahon was still in a lot of debt when reports went around on February 27, 2009, saying famous person was led into a hospital in Los Angeles that is not named for a month. Later, it became clear that this is Ronald's hospital, the Reagan UCLA Medical Center. He was admitted to the ICU for a bad situation with his publicists hearing that it was because of pneumonia. His spokesperson also didn't say if he had bone cancer or not say whether he had been told he had bone cancer at that time. He kept a relatively quiet profile until June 23, when in 2009, Ed McMahon died. Ronald Reagan. Just after midnight, UCLA Medical Center in California at Thedgley. His nurse says he is 86 years old, Kane. He died quietly. There was no official cause of death. However, McMahon's publicist said it was because of a number of things, health problems he had during his last months, which included the neck injury from long ago. The night he died, American TV host, comedian, and author Conan O'Brien paid his respects to McMahon on their show tonight. I can't do it. It's hard for anyone to picture The Tonight Show, Johnny Carson's show, without Ed McMahon. Ed's laugh to O'Brien said, that performance. He made the most famous washed in the history of broadcasting. There will never be anything like that again. Ed McMahon also got his own star on the Walk of Fame in Hollywood. And he was also put into the Hall of Fame after they died at Philadelphia's first radio and TV stations in 2010. He was inducted into the Hall of Fame.